Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Victor, and welcome to my YouTube channel, which is all about helping people navigate their spiritual awakening process. And today's video is going to talk about the whole idea of channeling. This video is aiming to demystify the concept of channeling and let you know how fundamental it actually is to every human being. And I'm also going to provide you with 7 signs so you can identify when you are in the state of channeling. And my guess is that most of you watching this have already channeled plenty of times.
So real quick, what is channeling? What does it really mean to channel? It's very simple. Channeling is when you're expressing yourself from the perspective of who you really are, rather than the mental concepts and ideas that you have formed around yourself that most people tend to identify with. Most people are under the false assumption that they, in their true identity, is really only the accumulation of their life experience and the different labels and concepts they have about themselves. For example, who they are, who their friends are, what they've done, what their job is. I'm such and such Victor, I'm a painter, I have a girlfriend, that's me. No, those are just ideas. We're all more than that. We all have a deeper identity than that most of us have completely lost connection with. But there are people on the planet who have learned to tap into their true self. True self meaning their soul, their spirit self. You hear the idea all the time that we are spirits temporarily having a physical experience, and that's true. And you can learn to allow the concepts you have about yourself to temporarily fall away, and who you really are can bleed and peer and shine through. And when you express that in your material world, whether you're painting or playing basketball or playing music, that's channeling. It's really no more mystical or complex than that. It's a natural human ability that everyone has the potential to do. Now, the people who tend to do this more noticeably are the people who have kind of discovered their purpose and their passion in life and dedicated their entire life to mastering that craft. And it's sort of like the idea of muscle memory. Once you really have sufficient mastery over a vocation of any sort, then there's not a lot of cerebral activity going on when you're doing it. You get to kind of let go. And that's when you open yourself up to these other aspects of your consciousness. And that's when you can draw through the genius and brilliance that dwells within every human soul. That's why you saw Michael Jordan. He talks about being, he didn't make his high school basketball team. He struggled, but he practiced. And he spent years and years and years perfecting his craft. And then if you watch these people like Michael Jordan or any really famous, brilliant person that we see as a master of their craft, when they're doing their thing, you could tell they're not really thinking. There's not a lot of cerebral activity going on. They're just kind of like in the zone, as people call it. They're channeling. They're not having to think because the vaster aspect of themselves is coming through. And it's a very valuable thing to learn how to do. And it eludes most people because it's so simple. People are waiting for something more mystical than it really is. So this video is going to provide you with 7 different signs so you can kind of know and become aware when you are channeling. Because I know you've all done it before. You just probably didn't know it. And when you can recognize that you're in the channeling state, you can just kind of remember what it feels like to be in the channeling state. And if you could start to reside more primarily in the channeling state, then you can have a better, happier, more fulfilling life. You can become aligned with your purpose in life and just derive great joy and just to have a very blissful earthly experience. So sign number 1 is you lose track of time. You've totally become unaware of the passage of time. You look at your clock and say, holy shit, I've been doing this for God knows how long. I can't believe it. It seemed like 5 minutes and 3 hours have passed. That's a common symptom. That's a very popular symptom of channeling. You might have heard the expression, time flies when you're having fun. Well, that's where that came from. It's true. Because when you're channeling, it feels really good. When you're doing the thing you love and you just feel really great. And when you're getting joy out of doing something just for the sake of doing it, rather than an outcome you're waiting to get, then you're more engrossed and enthralled in the moment. And when you live more in the moment, you don't really recognize time. Time is sort of a mental side effect of living our life in a linear moment-to-moment succession of moments that seem to string together. It's kind of an illusion in a sense. Number 2 is you feel very energized physically, mentally, emotionally. It gives you a lot of energy. You feel great. You're totally enthused. That's why a lot of people who are these like brilliant like athletes are able to just, they're able to go all day. Look at like a good example is Mick Jagger. He's the lead singer of the Rolling Stones, and in his 70s, like mid 70s or something like that, he's able to rock the stage. I saw him it was a few years back, so he was probably in his late 60s. I saw him, and I'm not a diehard Stones fan, but I was just blown away at how that man carried himself and danced around on stage. Now, I'm sure he's tired afterwards, and I'm sure he keeps himself in pretty decent shape, but you can just see that people, when they're doing their thing, when they're in that channeling state, they have an energy about them, an enthusiasm, and they feel great. Number 3, as a result of number 2, you tend to feel tired afterwards because you're just carried by all this. I used to call it like being high on spirit. You just get this spirit energy and this zest about you and this enthusiasm, and your thoughts are going fast, and you're just like, blah, blah, blah. You're just doing your thing, and you feel great. You're not recognizing the passage of time. You're just in the channeling state. But then, because you are in a physical body that is subject to fatigue and the laws of gravity and nature and whatnot, afterwards you tend to feel kind of wiped out. Especially like typical, like stereotypical channelers who really learn to bring forth other aspects of perhaps other personalities of their consciousness. A lot of them will say in the beginning it burnt them out. They were exhausted afterwards, and that's why, because there's a lot going on in your body when you're in the channeling state. And though you're kind of fueled by that channeled state in and of itself, there is the feeling of fatigue afterwards. Number 4, you feel a pure joy while you're doing your channeling, because, as I mentioned, I think in sign 1, in the channeling state, you do something really just for the sake of doing it, for the joy of doing it. You enjoy the journey of it. You're not just kind of like doing something to get to a certain place. And as a result, there's a natural, unconditional joy, because you're not really dependent on a certain outcome. You're just doing the thing you love to do because it feels great to do. So there's this very natural, pure joy that, again, is not dependent upon any outcome or anything outside of you. Number 5 is you get positive feedback from other people. When someone is in the channeling state, when you're watching Michael Jackson do his thing up on stage, whether you're a fan or not, it's amazing. There's something about that person, or Jim Morrison when he was rocking out back in the 60s and 70s, or Janis Joplin, or whoever your famous people that you really are fond of. When you watch them doing their thing, people just become like awestruck, because there's something about it. What you're witnessing is like a divine moment, a grace about this person that can't really be summed up into words. It's not that they do their certain thing particularly like better than other people. It's just there is something that you can perceive, the human being can perceive, when one is in alignment with their true self, their true purpose, doing their passion, whatever that may be. You can see it. And people will say, hey, wow, that was awesome. That was amazing. Whatever it is, you got it, man. Good job. Kudos to you. People will see it. Even really egotistical people who really tend to not be very aware of when divinity kind of presents itself in their life, even those people can oftentimes recognize something odd, something different about someone who's in that channeling state. Another thing is that it's often talked about, people who are in the channeling state. Like if you talk to like certain musicians, they'll say like the way they talk about what they do, when people want to give them credit, when people do give them that praise, they oftentimes say like, wow, it's not like me doing it. It just kind of comes through. It just kind of step out of the way and allow it to come through. That's the way it feels when you channel. It feels like something outside of you, when really it is you in your purest form, but it feels that way. Outside of you is coming through, and you're just kind of like witnessing it yourself, almost from like an objective perspective. Like, oh wow, that was awesome what I just did there. I can't believe that. So it feels that way. It feels like what you would think of something channeling through you feeling like. Number 7 is you need to move. You feel the need to move. Even if you watch like stereotypical channelers like Bashar, who's an entity channeled by a guy named Daryl Anka, or Abraham, Esther Hicks channels Abraham. You watch them, they're moving. Especially Bashar. This other guy I watch, a dronist. He's another entity that comes through, a guy named Brad something or other. And he's always like doing this, because when you are channeling, there is a lot of energy coming through your body, and sitting still is very hard to do. Channelers tend to kind of twitch and like move and sway and move their body, or especially, of course, athletes and musicians, they're always moving around. But it's very difficult to sit totally still when channeling. It's like this energy is coming through because it wants to be expressed in some way, and if you hold it back, you're going to be a little bit twitchy. So that's one way to tell. There's so much energy, so much positive, enthusiastic energy trying to come through you, and you will feel compelled to move, to express this energy. So those are my 7 signs, guys. Be aware of it within yourself, because we're living in a time right now where, in one sense, the whole idea of channeling is going to become obsolete, because humanity has been living cloaked in their ego, predominantly, most people, all the time. And what's happening is everyone, or a lot of us, are starting to shed our ego, our false identified self, our personality self, and our true essence, our true channeled self is starting to kind of pop through and emerge more and more and more and more as the days go on, and as we let go of this ego baggage. And pretty soon we're going to find ourselves always in the channeling state, or becoming merged with our highest potential self, a lot of us anyway. And that'll kind of make the whole notion of channeling meaningless, because we'll always be channeling. We won't really need to decipher channeling as if there's this big thing over here and it's coming through the little old me. We're becoming that big thing. That big thing is going to become us. So it's a very exciting time to be alive, guys, and it's very beneficial to be aware when you're in that channeling state, because that's the whole key to making this transformation, this inner and outer transformation that is being presented to people on the planet right now. The energies are changing, the frequencies of our reality are speeding up, and that's allowing us to tap in to these higher aspects of ourselves, of our soul self, which kind of are in these higher frequencies. We're learning how to bridge that gap and make that connection and channel ourselves through all the time. I'll leave you with this. The fastest way to become a more frequent channeler is to start spending more time doing what you love the most.